Hey, everybody, it's Bill, and this is Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures, and you're watching Late Night. So, we've got a big show headed up today. We're going to be doing some conversations about Batman, and we're going to have Johnny Sorensen on with Joneser. So, let me go ahead and get those guys in here real quick. So, we'll start with my main co host.
What's up, everybody? It's Joneser, your favorite comic book guy. So let's do this!
Hey!
What's up?
I came prepared today. Got the Batman shirt for the Batman discussion. Can't wait to see what our number one Batman fan
shirt on
up for us.
And my internet's trying to crap out on me now. Yours was earlier, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we got a storm over here, so I hope it holds tight.
Yeah, I hope so. Hopefully we can all hang in there. Let's get Johnny in the room.
Ooh.
Hey guys, what's going on?
What's up, Johnny?
It's still winter here, so I've got my long sleeves on. So I'm just holding a shirt.
The cooler one that I have. That one's awesome.
That's a badass shirt, man.
At some point, I lost count of how many. Is at least
put it back up there so everybody can see it big.
Oh, hang on. I'll bring it back again. Hang on. It's one of those old, well-known covers.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I like that cover.
Iconic.
Yeah. I've got about 20 different ones in the old closet there, just for Batman, not counting the other stuff.
Nice. All right. Well, I've got a little something to play to get this conversation started. But before I do, let's go over here and check out the comments and see what people have been saying.
Yeah, what's what people saying?
Johnny, you came in earlier and said, all right.
Yeah, I've never said that before.
That goes, all right.
That's it. That's it.
There you go. And, of course, Michael came in and said, hey to everybody. And Schmebelok says Bjorn Jorgensen. And Bjorn may not be able to stay all night tonight. He had a long day at work. He's a working man now. I get it, man. I'm a working man too. I know how it goes.
Work solo.
Jesse Hughes has come in to say hi to everybody. Hey, Jesse, glad you could make the show. And Joneser, you said you brewed you some extra strong, double strong coffee.
Yes, sir. I had a long day.
I've got my coffee right here. I've got it going as well. So
you got a cooler cup than mine, though. Like I got this plain Jane thing, but somebody's got some swag over there.
Yeah, if you check out my shop, you can get you a coffee cup just like that, or you can get one with X-Ray Boy on it. So yeah, I got that.
Get one of them. Keep saying that.
I see what went to Sally for a bit at the store for the first time.
What he meant to say is he worked solo.
Solo. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
He corrects it.
The first time by yourself in the toy shop. Okay. Hope that worked out well. And moving on down the line, Jesse says the black and yellow bat symbol is so iconic. Yeah, we were talking about that in the green room, Joneser. Yes. I'm curious when you guys get started about that yellow oval and what you guys think of it. And Bjorn says, I made a poor financial decision the other day and maybe some more today. Sounds like Bjorn bought some things he didn't have no business buying.
Same.
Yeah. I make poor financial decisions on a daily basis. I put a whole bunch of stuff on pre-order, and all of it it's not all in, but it's all started to hit the card right about the same time that I found out that I've been driving on Maypops on the front of my truck.
Yeah, I went to the card show with 5 boxes of comic books to sell and came back home with 9. So apparently I'm better at buying than selling.
Yeah, well, I had to buy 2 new tires to replace those Maypops on my truck today. So I've made poor financial decisions, and I had to figure out where the money was going to come from to do what had to be done. Badger says, I never read the comics, but the animated series is still my favorite superhero media.
Mine too.
Yes, the Batman the animated series, the Paul Dini cartoon was iconic and epic for its time. Yes,
that's one I keep going back to. I must watch that once a year.
I'm so happy to finally get the Blu-ray set of that a few months back.
Mask of the Phantasm is the best Batman animated movie in his
best Batman movie, full stop.
I agree.
And Johnny, you said the 1990s animated show was and is a fantastic production.
Yeah, I'm doing a written article on that later this year because I've been doing sort of more background research. And in addition to watching the show, I listen to podcasts. A lot of the people have talked about a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff years later on that. That's really interesting. I want to put into the full article.
Yeah, I get those special features on the DVD where they talk about the creating process, which was really interesting to me, and how it almost wasn't. That Bruce Lim and Eric Radomski almost didn't get the job. I
want to really. I've held off on that article for about 2 years because I know I'll get around to it, but there's so much depth to it. There's like the money came because 89 blew up in the movie, and then Warner was like, what else can we do with Batman? And then the production of it and how they got into it, and then the influences and your sort of like Fleischer influence and your Space Ghost stuff. So much went into it.
Well, and it's got almost that period piece look to it, but it holds up so well today, even still.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Bjorn has backed the HasLab Ghost.
What the heck is that?
It is a spaceship from Star Wars, and I don't know how much it's going to cost to back that thing, but it's a crowdfunded thing. So good for you, Bjorn. It sounds like a poor financial decision to me, but you will have a cool toy someday. Whenever
it makes you happy, it can't
be. And Adam, of course, is watching 2 streams at the same time, which I don't understand how he could do. And he said you're prepared with a Batman shirt there, Joneser, and he hasn't slept good in 48 hours since the San Diego Comic-Con. So much reveals. Yes.
Yeah, he's been on
a whole show about that, but there's plenty of shows about that out there, so there's no need for me to cover what's already been covered. But there were some superpowers reveals there that I'm kind of excited about. I can say that. The Badger says Arkham games helped keep him interested in Batman. The first 2 games especially.
Yeah, those games are great. I've completed them more than 10 times each at this point.
At least myself too.
There is our channel member, Susudio. Hey, Susudio. How's it going? Good to see you. Glad you showed up tonight. Bjorn says the Ghost is over 2 feet wide and almost 3 feet long and over a foot tall. I think it's big enough for the Black Series figures.
This thing is intangible.
Huge. Today I bought a classified figure because it came with a little rat buddy. Animal sidekicks are my weakness. Okay. All right. That catches up to Chad. So, are you guys ready to start a conversation about Batman?
I'm always
born ready.
All right, here we go. about that intro.
That was pretty cool, and Bill made that, so full credit to him.
That was awesome.
All right, and we had a few people join us. Screw Your Feelings is here, and so is OBS. Good to have you guys here. And Johnny Sorensen, Epic Badger says, my favorite Batman toys were the 2 Penguin Commandos from the Kenner Batman Returns line.
Yeah, those are cool. I've seen Badger show them off before.
Yeah, I've got those, and I took them away and gave them to the Superpowers Penguin.
He rehabilitated them with better people than the Penguin.
There you go.
And Adam has a question for Joneser. Is there a comic, Joneser, where Batman gets his back broke by Bane, and do you have it? And yes, I'm sure.
Yes and yes. Yeah.
And OBS says cool. And thank you, Screw Your Feelings. I appreciate that. I worked kind of hard on that this afternoon trying to get that together. Johnny was in there when I was getting ready to start that processing. So I had to pop out of the green room there, and because whenever I start processing videos, I can't do other things at the same time. But yeah, that by the way, if you guys are members of my Patreon, that intro video will be available for you to watch whenever you want to over on Patreon, on my Patreon page, and it will be available after tonight's show is over with. And OBS says that she refuses to watch new Batman.
You're not missing much.
Is Johnny Sorensen the Bat Guru? Why, yes, he is. He has his own blog. It's called Bat Fan on Batman. The link is in the description. So I want everyone to go over there and join his blog.
Don't go there, you'll regret it.
That
I love reading those.
He has some awesome articles over there, and it's really worth taking a look at. Pop Actor Rick says, if your life was dependent on it, which movie would you watch? Batman Forever or Batman and Robin?
Oh, that's a tough question.
I know mine.
Can I just like get one of the not living pills now and avoid both of them?
I would watch Forever just because I have a decent memory of going to the theater and watching it with my uncle and my cousin.
Oh, I can't remember which is which. I'll go. I don't like either of them. I like all the cast that's in them. Whichever one Nicole Kidman was in, I could tolerate seeing her in that outfit again. Batman
Forever. Yeah, I'm a Batman Forever. I'd rather watch that than I had watched Batman and Robin. Yeah. With Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, well, I don't remember that. I don't think that happened. I think that was a nightmare we all had.
Yeah, you got the MIBs turned up at Jones's doors after that movie.
And Epic agrees with us there. The Badger agrees with us. Forever is preferable. And how do you get on the Patreon page to see the intro? Well, first of all, unfortunately, Susudio, I'm going to fix it where you can watch it because you're a channel member, and I can do channel member only posts on the community page. You will see the link to watch that video on that community post here probably before tomorrow, probably after tonight's show when I put it on Patreon. But those members who are members of Patreon will also be able to watch it. And how does that work? Well, it's a little bit of jiggery pokery on my part, but it's an unlisted video on a separate channel. That way nobody else can see it because they don't know where it's at. And the only people who can see it are those that I share the link with. And the only people I share the link with are channel members and Patreons. So there you go. Bill, did you get the ad I sent you? I think I did, but right now my memory is like a sieve. So everything's been falling through the holes. So I'll have to recheck my emails and look at that again. But I did see an email from you. Same here. I cannot bring myself to watch Patterson Batman. Might give Bales a chance someday. It's been 20 years since. I like Christian Bale's Batman. I did not like the last of the trilogy of it. I didn't like the way it ended. I wasn't particularly enthralled by the third option of that one.
The third one's definitely the weakest.
Yeah,
I think it's the weakest one of the three.
Patterson's Batman was okay. At least he didn't sparkle in the sun.
Right.
Did you guys ever see the pictures of Christian Bale when he first pumped up during pre-production for Batman Begins, and he got too big and put too much muscle on, and he looked like a bloody full-on wrestler.
Right. I can't watch George Clooney version of Batman. Well, I hate to say this, but I watched The Flash yesterday with my wife. I'll say this:
can't be forgiven for that.
It would probably have been a more successful movie if it weren't for you know who.
The lunatic that stars in the film. Plus the people back of them.
Yeah, and the people he kidnapped and
yeah, exactly. I mean and then there was Thanos brought it up today on Ozzy's show. The mental health joke right in the middle of it just kind of took me straight out of it. So yeah, there you go. But you know, if you want to see Michael Keaton one more time as Batman, that's the way to go. And if you want to see George Clooney one more time as Bruce Wayne, stick around to the end. I spoiled it. Sorry.
I'm only going to watch it probably with the sound off later in the year just to see Michael Keaton and the rest of it. I'm going to ignore and then pick up some toys on clearance, hopefully.
Pop Factor Rick says he could never picture Christian Bale as Batman. He always sees him as Patrick Bateman.
It was fantastic in that movie. That and The Machinist are like just full-on roles where he's just, whoa.
Have you seen him in, I think there was one on The Boxer, Mickey.
Yeah, the fighter.
That was pretty good too. He plays that part well.
And that was with, I think that was with that Aussie actor, the Edgerton or whatever.
Yeah, that was a good film.
Yeah, I got that on Blu-ray. Watched it a bunch.
All right, guys. Let me go ahead and bring the slideshow up.
There's the man, Joneser.
And we're going to bring Joneser up to the top.
And something about that.
Right underneath him. All right. I'm going to sit down here and run the slideshow and act like a peanut gallery, basically. I'll say my 2 cents every now and then. But this is you guys' show, so pretty much I want to see you guys just talking it up, and I'll throw some chat in every once in a while as well. But here we go. Conversations about Batman. This is a part 1, basically. I don't know when we'll do part 2, but part 2 is coming soon. But today we're going to talk about pretty much the beginnings of the Batman right after the crisis was over with up until somewhere in the 90s. So, and
these are Jones's picks in the slideshow. There's a whole bunch of stuff. He sent me an email and it kind of just broke it in half and it went mostly chronological because there's so much stuff and I just thought what's going to fit in here and we can do a part 2 another time.
These are the major storylines that happened in that period of time. I want to call it the beginnings of the modern age.
Yeah.
And so Batman Year 1 started out in Batman 404 through 407 of a 4-issue mini-series inside the main comic series that basically retold Batman's origin story. Go, guys.
Well, I'll just jump in and say the first time I seen this, I was a kid and I was at the library and we were looking for books and I don't know if they had a collected edition or if it was a graphic novel, but I remember flipping through this as a kid and God, I might have been 6, 7 years old, 8 years old max. So I wasn't quite emotionally mature enough to appreciate all the nuances of this story. You know what I mean? I was just like, where's Batman? Oh, why does it keep going to Commissioner Gordon all the time? And so I'm skipping pages and I'm not really taking it in. So it wasn't until I had a little more patience and I was a teenager and I reread it that I could really appreciate it.
Yeah, I can't remember the first time I read it. Probably would have been sometime in the 90s in a trade edition. I do remember seeing those actual covers in back issue bins, but I was probably buying Spider-Man comics at that time. And I've read it a bunch of times over the years, and it's really it's very filmic in the panels, the layout, the coloring. You can see why they pinched a lot of scene for scene parts in this, and most of the live action films have borrowed from this very heavily, because it's laid out in a way that plays out like a film, or almost like a Japanese high quality anime, like a serious one, not your kiddie ones, where it's like serious adult themes, tones, the style, more realistic art, and less cartoony. So there's a lot going on in that series.
Absolutely. And I'd like to continue on what Johnny was saying there, that it's definitely a change of tone from what Batman comic looked like before this, in a way. I mean, and it does kind of feel like a movie or something special, or it's different. You knew you were into something different here. And it was neat to see Batman kind of reset or put back to the beginning, where in this he can make mistakes and he's not quite got it all figured out yet. And so it was a treat.
Touching on what Bill said too, it appears a lot of folks who have only read this, and they've republished the trade edition of those original 4 issues many times in one volume, and it's not super long. You can sit down and read it in an hour or so. But it was its own little mini sort of continuity that sort of just fitted in if you wanted it to with the new ongoing DC universe, or it can just be its own solo story, because the next month they were back to the regular comics and the regular stories. It was its own little mini thing, but still very influential in what came after it.
Well, let me interject here for a minute. I picked these up as they came out on the newsstand.
Mm-hmm.
I was a young man in my late teens. This was basically right around the time, or right after, the Man of Steel miniseries had come out, where John Byrne had brought us the post-crisis Superman. So at the time, each superhero was supposed to be reintroduced to us, because the multiverse had shrunk, had gone away, and it was now one new Earth, and all of the backstories had slightly changed. And they started with Superman, and Batman was next, and after Batman it was Wonder Woman. But Batman, instead of being reintroduced the way Superman was, he was reintroduced within his title. With this miniseries within the actual comic itself,
which they repeated in the New 52. They introduced him within his own title again.
Right.
I missed out.
Did that erase the events of this one?
Unfortunately, yes, but in my mind, no. Right. This was probably one of the most realistic takes on Batman I'd ever seen. Mazzucchelli's artwork was spectacular, and of course, this was before Frank Miller had completely lost his mind, and the comic was pretty much good. Batman did not tell everyone that he was the goddamn Batman in this at this point.
No.
It's as good as his Daredevil, best Daredevil.
The only gripe that I have with it, and I didn't have it at the time when I was reading this was absolutely the bomb. Okay. But the only gripe that I have with it as an old man is I did not like the way Catwoman was reintroduced in it as a prostitute. So I'm going to move this on to the next slide.
And that's something they kept in the Batman with Robert Pattinson. They pinched from that year one. They don't tell you she's a prostitute, but everything about the way she's dressed, the haircut, her outfits, all from that year one.
Pretty much. And we're looking at this slide here, which is basically one of the title pages. I think it was the second issue, maybe.
They did those frontispieces where they've got that red motif going, and they did that through the 4 issue, not just in the comic, but the advertising and other comics leading up to it. They were showing off stuff like this, and then they used that very heavily in the marketing campaign for The Batman with Pattinson, which I didn't notice until I was rereading this again a few months back. I went, hey, that's where all that red business comes from.
Very interesting. I did not catch that either. And of course, we're looking at the artwork here, which was very gritty and real, and
this
almost
is that 70s
cinematic.
New York taxi driver grunge sort of thing again.
Yeah, I mean,
Gotham
City looks like a dump, does it not? And
it's a garbage tip of wretched refuse.
Well, and I love, this is one of my favorite panels when he's walking through, and he hasn't seen it since he was younger, and he's like, it's actually gotten worse.
Privileged rich boy.
You know, and it's a red light district, you know, basically in any major city. And I thought back to this panel when I went back home into San Diego, and we went through some areas of downtown where I was like, oh my God, I'm Bruce Wayne. It actually happened. You know, like you didn't, you know, it wasn't like I remembered it.
Yeah, and then of course you see, was it Flass or whatever his name was over there? Piece of crap cop who's dirty and in on it. I think Eckhart was probably close to that in the '89 Batman movie.
Sure, I think they were definitely Eckhart was maybe Flass meets Harvey Bullock mixed into.
Yeah, exactly. You know. More Harvey Bullock looking, but more Flass acting, I guess. Yeah. And of course, Flass gets his before it's over with.
That's one of my favorite parts of this. In fact, quite honestly, this is every bit Jim Gordon's story as it is.
Very much so. I think it's told from Gordon's point of view for a great deal of it, and it kind of threw me for a loop, because in my mind, Gordon had a daughter, not a son. And then we didn't find out until later that in this new continuity, she was pretty much an adopted daughter from. But anyway, and of course there was also a little bit of a spicy thing going on between Eason and Gordon.
You know, and quite honestly, I kind of liked that too, because it adds to the realism and the gritty style that we're talking about here, where he's a bit of a flawed hero. You know, he's not perfect. He's you know, it added to the believability.
Well, and the other thing that a casual fan might have missed, right before all of this, Frank Miller had done an iconic graphic novel series called The Dark Knight Returns, which was set in the near future, that showed a aging 50-year-old Batman who had been retired for 10 years, putting the cape and cowl back on and coming back out to fight crime once again. And in that, we find a Commissioner Gordon who is about ready to retire, who is married to Eason. Yes.
Yeah.
What you find out later is, as Frank Miller began losing his mind, he imagined that every story that he ever wrote about Batman all happened in the same continuity. So he began writing them so that they lead into one another, as Batman also falls off the deep end of mental illness along with Frank Miller.
I like on the page on the right there, if you take Jim Gordon, they show him consistently with the ginger hair there, that sort of Irish heritage. And if you watch Batman Begins, Gary Oldman, look at that picture. You can see what they based it on very clearly.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah. No, that was a great cast.
Ginger Gordon rather than the grey-haired Gordon. Like, that's, to me, my favourite version of him that they've used in other versions of Batman media in it.
And moving right along, we have some more panels from that with Commissioner Gordon here.
Look at that. You can feel that punch up to the top. Look at that right in the gut, and he's lifting him off the ground with body armor on.
Put him through the wall even.
And of course, this was also something that happened in this that I never saw them use again in the comics that I wish they had of. I think it was used a couple times in a couple different movies, maybe, where Batman has this little high pitched squealy thing that brings the
they used
bat
that in the
to
Nolan
the bat
movies.
cave.
And this whole scene where the SWAT guys come after him in the Dark Knight, one of Heath Ledger, where he strings them all off the building. They got that out of this.
Yeah, and that is really cool because it kind of adds to the one of my favorite things about Batman is we know as an audience reading the thing that he's just a man. You know, I mean, you can see him bleeding through the leg as he's kicking the cop there. He's injured, he's wounded, he's mad. But in the mind of his opponents, of the people he's against, he's some kind of goddamn vampire or what is this guy?
And that's playing into those old pulp heroes like the Shadow, where he's like an urban myth or legend, and it's the early days. Not people haven't seen him. Does he exist? Is he he's an urban boogeyman?
Right. Is he even real? You know?
Well, that brings up a point. There's an issue of a Batman. I can't remember where it was, back in the Bronze Age, where Bruce Wayne basically has some kids and they're on a camping trip together, and they're all around the campfire, and each kid tells a story about his meeting with Batman, and each one of them tells a different tale with a different Batman in it. One of them, Batman can fly, and one of them, Batman is a true Batman, almost like Man Bat. And each one of them has this different spin on what Batman is, and none of them are a costumed man like Batman truly is. It's what they saw in their mind.
Well, even in this, I'm sorry, Johnny, go ahead.
It's a great little short story, the one Bill mentioned, and they did an animated version of that, and it was either one of the DVD features or Brave and the Bold, but it's only about 10 minutes, and they show 3 little vignettes seeing that kid's mind, how one was a robot and one was a man bat, and showing them as it plays on your brain, fills in gaps in reality. We only see a certain amount of things with our senses, and your brain fills in the rest. And that story was just genius, what they did with it.
Well, before the 89 Batman movie came out, in the comics, back in the backside of the comic, our favorite artists and writers and editors would have their little say with columns and things
editorials
like that in the back. And I remember that a Batman movie was in production back in the late 80s, and we were looking forward to that. What could it be like? Was it going to be like the campy Batman TV show, or was it going to be even worse, like those old movie serials with Batman in them? How could they do this properly? And I remember one of the things that they touted that they wanted to do was fix it so that you never actually saw a full-on shot of Batman on screen, that he was always going to be operating out of the shadows, that you would only see
Alien.
Yeah, you would only see a flourish of cape or maybe a silhouette, and then he would but of course they kind of worked with that a little bit, but in the Michael Keaton movie, but it didn't come out quite the way they had described it. But I often wondered what it would have been like if we had never actually seen Batman full on, and I thought that was what they were going with the Christian Bale movie, but it didn't turn out that way.
Well, they did a scene like that in the docks where he's hiding behind the crates and all that. But I feel like that would work as like a good animation thing. They could do something good with that.
Well, I was going to add in this issue with the Batman, there's a scene where Detective Flass is talking about Batman, and in his mind, it's not a he, it's an it, and then he describes him being taken out. He just points at this guy and like claws in his hand, and the guy pumped 3 bullets into him. It didn't even faze him, and like you see it went through the cape, but like Flass in his mind it was something else.
And like if you're at nighttime, you camouflage with those dark colors, you're hiding in the alley like a ninja, and you're disappearing like a smoke bomb. That really goes into that whole urban boogeyman where their mind's feeding into their fears about like what is he and does he exist. I love it.
No, yeah, it was great. It's one of my favorite scenes.
Which brings us over to the introduction of Selena Kyle, the Catwoman, as a dominatrix, a spicy worker there. With
I really like this version of Catwoman.
With her little underage little companion there, who was also
that touches on a very real world problem. I won't get into the details because
it does.
I like that he put that in there because it spotlights a very serious real world problem.
No, and it did. And there's even a scene where she's like, well, aren't you a little young? And she's like, how young do you want me to be? And
they used that same scene in the Batman of Robert Pattinson exactly with that same character, but they don't mention specifically that they're prostitutes. Right. They just imply it because they felt it was such a touchy subject in this day and age that they didn't want to explicitly say what it was going on.
One of the interesting things was they could get away with stuff in the comic books that you can't get away with in a cartoon show because nobody reads the comics except us geeks, right?
Well, one thing I want to point out with this panel here where it has Holly talking to Selena, and you get this wonderful dialogue in the bubble where everybody, whether you read this, you heard it this way in your mind. Selena, you punch fan. And they even have the extra A in there. And it's like you have like an idea in your mind of what this girl sounds like without ever hearing her.
It's good.
And of course, there's the piece of crap pimp Stan there where Selena's done punched his lights out. And he had stabbed Bruce Wayne in the leg when Bruce came in disguised.
Actually, he didn't do it. Holly did it.
Holly did it. You're right.
He didn't do it.
Because they're like a gang coming after this guy coming into their neighborhood. Like, who's this idiot?
Right. Well, they thought he was a cop. Or
Stan looks like a damn zombie to me. He looked like he's on drugs.
They got those desaturated colors going on. And they kept, see how in the background of that third panel it says hotel and you can see the fire escape?
Yeah.
In that, the Batman and Robert Pattinson, she's on that second level in that exact same apartment in that movie.
Yeah, at one time, they teased us that they were going to do Batman Year One and they were going to do it set in the 70s, like an old 70s cop movie. I wish they had done that. I think that could have been.
Well, we got instead that animation one that was fairly decent, and
I like that.
It's definitely highlights that it's kind of Jim Gordon's story because the narration and that, which is good. It kind of accentuates this without like being disrespectful to it.
Yeah, but this movie I'm talking about was gonna be like the French Connection, but it was gonna be a bad.
Yeah.
That would have been kind of.
Pick your feet in Poughkeepsie.
And going on to the next slide, we're talking about the motifs and digital recolors, but the red theme was absent in the digital recolors, and I didn't like that. I kind of like the red theme.
I did like the red, and I don't know exactly why they changed it. I'm sure I read or heard a podcast years ago with the guys that worked on it talking about it, saying, we want it to be, it's a bit of the old George Lucas Star Wars thing. I want it to be this in my mind, but technology made it more like this and the printing. But all the advertising leading up with that red motif, it can't have been completely wrong because they reused it again with the film the other year. So, they were leaning into it. Jim Lee's done promotional posters with red art riffing on that. And I just found it odd that they sort of erased that from the original book.
I'm going to go the other direction. If you go back to that panel, Bill, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I can.
I liked the other color. I thought it was a little darker, or a little grittier, a little more.
It takes you more into the world.
It was a little more realistic looking, and I actually liked the other version. And maybe that's because I don't know if that's the first version I saw, because I think I saw a graphic novel version.
Yeah, the trades had the recolored, and I think both versions are good. I don't think either version is wrong or bad or anything.
Right.
It's more the kind of promotion and the stuff around the series at the time. I wish they had chucked in as an appendix in the new trades. Oh, by the way, here was the old colors and promotional stuff. Give the historical context, because in your mind, if you've read those old ones or looked at them, and you see the new one, and you're going, "Am I getting a Mandela effect here? Am I remembering stuff wrong? Have I got fucking dementia? What's going on?"
Right.
And of course, I read them as they came out, and it was like, what's going to happen next, and this theme of everything kind of being read in certain scenes was prevalent throughout the issue. So I kind of remember that.
It's kind of a tonal thing too. If you watch like 70s American new wave cinema, it's like a cinematography thing and lighting, and I mean, here it's a comic book, it's a flat plane, so it's just a hard red. But if you're in the red light district, you're seeing red lights. If you're in different grungy areas, you're seeing different tones and shades. So it's kind of playing into that cinematic kaleidoscope effect of the lighting in it.
Now, moving on to the next slide, we're going to see that the legacy of imitators. Yeah, we have all these year ones that came out, and of course, then there was something that came out that I was disappointed in year 2.
Pretty much everything on there except for the Batgirl Robin was good, but most of the other stuff is not so good.
Yeah, even Punisher had him a year 1 there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What you talking about, Willis?
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
Batman year 2 was disappointing on many levels, and mostly it was because when they announced that there was going to be a Batman year 2, I thought it was going to be a sequel to Batman year 1, picking up the story right where it ended with Batman fighting the Joker for the first time, and with Mazzucchelli and Miller coming back and doing it, and then we got this instead.
I do like the Reaper as a kind of design. He's a cool looking character. I got the old Mattel figure of that, and I got a Mattel Batman in the blue and grey. But they did what every good 80s horror movie studio did, whether it was like New Line or Canon or whatever. They're like, oh, something became popular unexpectedly. Let's use the branding and slap it on a whole bunch of stuff, and that's what you see. The Batgirl Robin was many years later, and that's actually a genuinely good comic that I love having the trade of, because it's actually 2 series in one. There's a Batgirl series and a Robin. They put them into one trade. Punisher year 1 was actually decent for the time. It wasn't bad. That was a lot of years later. But the Batman year 3, the Batman year 2, like you got the McFarlane did the covers there. The image right up the top middle with the big flowing cape, you can see that's just his Spawn cape, but it's Batman. And he did a figure of that just last year too, based on that
I popped Mike's up there. He said the year 2 McFarlane figure was awesome, and it was. And the art is okay. I mean, I have no problem with the art.
That's okay. But the story was.
The story was subpar. I think they kind of reused the plot of that with that Batman animated movie that they did.
Yes, the Phantasm's definitely based around the Reaper as far as the big sickle hands, and they changed the colors. But they did a bit of story. Like year 2, I don't think year 2 was bad, but it's no better than the average monthly comic.
It was an okay Batman story, but it wasn't year 2 in my mind.
It wasn't a prestige format. It wasn't a year 2. It was just using the branding.
Did you like the Gotham TV series? Mike wants to know.
Hell no.
I thought it had its moments.
That's what I was. It did have its moments, but it wasn't. I didn't fit it in well, and I didn't like the fact that we have supervillains being introduced while Bruce is still just a little boy.
Yeah, well, see, continuity-wise, it doesn't work, but I'd have to say casting-wise, some of those supervillains were cast quite well, which was also kind of a waste because we couldn't really use them the way we wanted to see them.
Right.
Like production-wise, special effects-wise, sure, objectively it's fine, but for some reason, when Zack Snyder came along and just fucked DC up the bloody clacker, and then left Ben Affleck in the wind, not being able to do a movie, and it was breaking up from his marriage, didn't do that solo Batman movie. The legacy is we got about 5+ years of solo direct-to-TV stuff related to Gotham and Batman that didn't have Batman in it. And I'm like, why are you making all these projects about Batman that don't have the core character, that don't have the main draw or appeal in the thing? I'm like, it's a waste of time. And if they wanted to do a TV show, they should have done Gotham Central, which was HBO's The Wire, as a Batman fucking story where he's in the background and it's about the cops, and it's a genuinely good 30 issue or so series. that it's like a police procedural, your NYPD Blue, The Wire, whatever, any of that, totally serious, that would have worked perfectly as a bloody, like pay TV type cable show.
And they kind of met that in the middle because a lot of that Gotham was kind of, centered around the cops and the villains, and
but it was like the CW type thing, it's
right.
like vanilla. It's not MC Hammer, it's Vanilla Ice. It's like the bootleg version of Batman.
Well, yeah, there was that motif going on around that time as well, and they were playing off on that. The Superboy Smallville television series, basically.
Now that casting of the Penguin on that show and the Riddler really kind of stole.
I like the Riddler in that. As a matter of fact, that the way they portrayed him was good. Here we go. Sean Pertwee was a great Alfred in that, according to Gojatron. I stuck in a bad show, yes.
Yeah, you get good actors, you get good production values and stuff behind the scenes, but the whole project from the get-go is just not. It's not quite right.
Well, it wasn't what you wanted, some of that, like I said, some of that casting was great, but unfortunately it wasn't being
what
used.
Happened, they did that Batman with Pattinson and bloody Colin Farrell was Penguin. He was an excellent Penguin in that movie. He's like year one Penguin before he's Cobblepot. He's just a goon before he becomes a crime lord. They were supposed to do a spin-off TV show with that, and now they're saying I was actually looking forward to that. That was something I would have watched.
Right. And the thing is, like, I'm going to gripe on that Pattinson Batman just a little bit here before we get back on track. But the thing was, I went to that. I saw it in the theater. I wanted it to be good. I wanted to like it. For me, the movie was a little too long. It's a little too much Batman walking in slow motion in the rain to Nirvana songs. And the car chase scene in Colin Farrell is really the best parts of the movie. And
just a Mad Max scene they punched.
Sure. And at any time you get Batman and he has to punch a guy 95 times, that just tells me he's weak. I mean, be able to punch a guy once, he should be done.
It was a little skinny boy like me, and I'm like, can't be Batman. He can't be fucked. And he went on publicly saying, I'm not going to gain any muscle for this. Why? You're meant to be fucking, at least get some gymnastic muscle in there like a Neil Adams Batman. It just seems like, I think he's an okay actor, and I was not going to watch that film. I was hell-bent on not watching it at all. I've been burnt out on all the bloody DC Snyderverse garbage. I was not going to see it at all, especially on the cinema. And a good friend of mine who's about 20 years older and has watched Taxi Driver in the cinema, and he's been going to the movies since the 50s. That's how old he is. He said, let's go see it. I'm like, no, it'll be garbage. What do you want to watch that for? He likes proper actual films like Fellini and all sorts of real films. And I said, okay, but he knows I'm a Batman idiot. So I said, okay, I'll go to it just so I can hang out with you. But if I fall asleep in it, I don't care. I'm not interested. I'm sure it'll be garbage. I was surprised at how decent it was objectively as a film. I won't say it's a great film. I won't say it's a great Batman film. But what it is it's like your 90s Legends of the Dark Knight or a good Hellboy comic, or the X-Files at the early episodes in the 90s. They're going in, there's a crime scene, they're investigating stuff. It's not about the spectacle so much. It's not about so much special effects and technology. It's like, well, he's a bloody detective. Let him detect stuff and do things like Sherlock Holmes. And none of the other live-action films ever did that until that one. So I enjoyed it on that level, but it's as good as a middle-of-the-road 90s Batman comic. It's.
Well, all right, guys. While we're on the subject of movies, real quick, let's address Mike here, who says, in your opinion,
might as well.
What was the best Batman movie ever, including the 1966 Adam West movie? I'm going to go with Adam West or Michael Keaton and not taking anything away from any other actors after that. That's
kind of two. It's like, who do you like best as an actor and what do you like best as a film? You go, Jones.
I'm going to say I got two. I know you're supposed to say one, but I'm going to say two real quick. The Michael Keaton first one for me, because that's the one I remember as a kid. But the one I would put ahead of that as I think a better story or a better film or Batman done a little more right would be Batman Begins. I thought that was a solid film with Christian Bale. But to me, in my opinion, live action Batman has never really hit all the buttons that I wanted to hit.
Yeah. That's my issue with
I
it.
agree
Like,
with that.
I'll say straight up, I like all the actors who've been in any of the Batman films. I like George Clooney in other films. I like Michael Keaton in Batman, but I'd rather watch him in any of his other better films for his strengths. Christian Bale, like he was a guy that kind of slapped me in the head like that. I wasn't really aware of him at the time. Batman Begins, I felt the same way as the Patterns. I thought, oh, this is going to be garbage. Was pleasantly surprised. And a mate I've known since high school for 30 plus years, it's like, no, this guy's in some cool indie films and stuff. I went down to the VHS rental store and I watched everything Bale had been in, from like when he was a child actor right up to bloody Machinist and what was the other one? Prestige with Hugh Jackman. And I was like, man, this guy is like, he's out there. He's fucking hard edge. He's like goes to the extremes. So I really enjoy him as an actor. And probably my favorite live action one is probably The Dark Knight. If I'm going to put something on just to watch for fun, which is funny because I like bleak films. I like 70s films. I like Taxi Driver. I like stuff that's existential and angsty and depressing is actually enjoyable to me. So I don't think it's the greatest film. It's just riffing on Michael Mann's Heat, but it happens to be Batman and Joker rather than Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And he was very public about that when he made it. He wasn't like Nolan loves Bond films, which he did in Inception with the whole down the hill ski chase. And he likes certain 70s and 80s movies. And I happen to enjoy the movies he enjoys, so I enjoy when he does his cover versions of those films. But the Batman bloody Adam West, I didn't love as a kid, but I've come to really love Adam West as an adult for being not just a good actor, but like a bit of a cavalier guy who flew around without a bloody pilot's license. I think it was Hawaii he was in. He used to go and fly people around the island without a license.
Well, the thing about the 66 Batman,
he did a great job.
I watched it as a kid, and I liked it as a kid because it was right up my alley as a kid. It was very cartoony, and it's what we wanted as a kid. Mm-hmm. As I got a little older, I kind of turned against it because it was so stupid in my mind. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I became older and I watched it for what it was, and then you said, "Wait a minute, I know what they're doing here now."
Yeah, they did camp on purpose. They did a very European camp sort of style, and they did that. What was it? The Dutch tilt with the camera, and like Burt Ward and Adam West, they were just fantastic as that. And Adam West, like he had a real physicality to him. He was in. He had an athletic body. He surfed and did stuff. He was the first physical Batman before the modern era of Henry Cavill and Bale or pumping up in the gym with special coaches. He was just the guy that did that stuff by himself anyway.
And before we move on here to the Killing Joke, I want to address Mike here. He said Val Kilmer played in Batman 2. Batman 2 was actually Batman Returns, and Keaton actually returned for that one.
It was in the third. 2 is in also.
Okay. 3 and 4 was Kilmer and Clooney.
Yeah, George Clooney played him after Kilmer for a reason. I think the reason was they thought.
I agree. Val Kilmer was an excellent Bruce Wayne, even though I don't care for that film. I mean, I love Val Kilmer and George Clooney as actors who are great in other projects that don't involve Joel Schumacher, who also did good films that weren't those. But they were coming off that whole Batman Returns. Penguin's parents tried to murder him as a baby, and we made McDonald's toys, and they weren't happy. So our sponsors are messing with us. We need something lighter in tone, so they went back to that 60s camp style.
Well, I agree. I agree with Sir Clifton here that Kilmer was a good actor, and he did the best he could with what he had to work with. But a lot of what happened with Batman Returns and ultimately Batman and Robin was not the actor's fault. It wasn't George Clooney's fault. It wasn't Val Kilmer's fault.
Absolutely not.
It was all Joel Schumacher's fault.
And Warner Brothers.
I don't entirely blame him. It's a studio
and Warner Brothers.
No,
Warner Brothers too, because Warner Brothers is the one that decided, hey, wait a minute, we're going too dark here. We need to return back to the.
They were more hands off with Burton for Batman and Batman Returns, and like I've watched most of Burton's films. anything post 2000 of Burton is like fairly rubbish. Before that, he done consistently good films.
Well,
He was a
here's the
weirdo,
thing.
art house crazy that did
Burton's
odd stuff.
okay as long as you keep him reeled into reality. What happened was with Batman Returns, they gave him full control over that, and he
yeah. They realized he was an art house kid.
Then they went all the way in the other direction with it, and brought Schumacher in, and went in the way. The pendulum doesn't ever stop where it needs to. It always has to either go all the way this way or all the way this way.
Yeah. But I would have liked to have seen a third Batman film with Tim Burton. I would have liked to see there was all the pre-production and this and that, and then it changed.
There's a YouTube video out there that kind of goes into what it might have been.
Yeah, there's been a couple like that are worth having a look.
I would have liked to have seen Harvey Dent.
I wanted to see old Lando back as Harvey Dent.
Let's get off the movies for a minute, guys, because we got a long slideshow here. We could do movies all night long.
We can.
Next, we need to go into what many consider to be the most iconic Joker story of that era, the one that defined the Joker as really, really dangerous and absolutely insane. And that is The Killing Joke. And of course, we see here that Brian Boland and Alan Moore got together, and possibly a wizard, to create this.
Or chaos magician, if you prefer.
He is.
Do you want to go, Jonesy?
Oh, I was just saying that Alan Moore does his magic. Yeah, that's absolutely he's a wizard or magician.
What do you think about Killing Joke? For better or worse, what's your opinion?
Honestly, I didn't read it until much later in life, and I got the graphic novel version. But I'd have to say that they really kind of gave the Joker some substance to his character before he was either the complete psychopath or the clown, where he was a little too cartoony, and this one kind of, really kind of put him into that darker tone. But, there's a lot to dig into with this story, but I prefer the Joker in this light. I think they kind of went this way in that Arkham video game, where they just kind of had him a little twisted, but still able to make a gag and be funny.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first story in which there were consequences to what the Joker did, and it was terrible, and it reverberated, and we'll get into that in just a minute here as we progress the slides on this one. But and we'll talk about the ending as well, which was to me a little bit of a letdown, but some people think it's just iconic. So
what's your interpretation of the ending? Because there's different ideas and fan theories, and I put it right there to, that's the last page first.
Well, let's get to that when we get to that, because I have some meat on that bone too. I'd like to get into. My first thing about this is it's like I love the art so much in this, and it's very much this is American characters, but both the people working on it are British, and it's got that kitchen sink realism. Look at that on the left side, third panel. Look at that drip coming off of Batman's chin. That's not something you'll typically see in an American comic. These little details and the little wrinkles in the fabric, and there's kind of wrinkles in his skin and his jowl. That's very kitchen sink British comics and Judge Dredd and that sort of stuff. Absolutely.
And I remember when this I once again I picked this up as it came out, and I'm showing my age. I know I'm an old man, but this was touted as being not only the ultimate Joker story, but it was going to be an origin story for the Joker. And in my mind, it maybe was, but it could be, but it could be just the Joker's mental illness as well. So, very interesting story. I everyone needs to read this.
I agree.
I think it's an excellent story, and like the artwork's fantastic. It's very like year one. It's very cinematic, and this was like DC were pushing this sort of graphic novel format where they had better more kind of magazine, glossier quality to really bring out those colors, those painterly type colors over the old toilet paper that comics used to be printed on. And that Neil Adams fought for back in the 70s and 80s to say, let's get decent art on decent paper. They were getting into the late 80s, 90s. They were starting to do more prestige format stuff, direct market, comic book shop. And it was more mature, more for adults. It was more like your European comics, your Japanese anime stuff, where this was made for adults. This was never made for kids. And it's also a book that was made as a kind of one-shot story that's not meant to be within the mainline continuity, but for whatever reason, DC made it have the impact of crippling Barbara Gordon, becoming Oracle in the wheelchair, and had a real legacy that wasn't intended. And Alan Moore's come out publicly and said, I didn't intend for that to happen. It was just a one-off story. They asked,
Well, there's some undertones, especially in this part here, where it's heavily implied that she may have been sexually assaulted.
Yeah, and possibly him too, if you read between the panels and lines.
Yeah.
Because Joker is asexual or hypersexual if you look into the history of him.
Right.
Well, one of the things that that was brought out in this, was the idea that the Joker wants to prove to Batman that if you have one bad day, it can turn you just like him.
Yeah.
Right. He was trying to drive.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to take your best friend, and I'm going to put him through so much crap that he goes insane, just like I am, to show you that all it takes is one bad day. And they've tried to show that in the movies as well, but not nearly as well as this.
He's done all this horrible stuff just to mess with Batman, and the poor unfortunate readers like, why is Jim Gordon naked in a dog collar? My brain can't process that.
And of course, this was released as a prestige format series for a reason. They didn't want it. This never would have gone past the comic code.
No, as direct market comic shops, it's not going to your newsagents and retail. It's going to the comic shops, and they're tucking it up the back, and you're going to have to look for it. You're not going to see it up front.
Right.
And of course, like you said before, the crippling of Barbara Gordon had a lasting effect, because now she was wheelchair bound. Now she would never walk again. Now she had to become the Oracle. And as you said, that wasn't really meant to be. This was supposed to be a kind of a one-off story in his mind.
Like an alternate continuity.
But now we're devoid of a Batgirl. She's gone now, because
that's what pisses me off. Because if you look at European comics, Japanese comics, there's shitloads of female characters and superheroes. In American comics, there's not a heck of a lot. They're iconic. There's Wonder Woman, there's Batgirl, there's a few other good ones. It pissed me off that, like, one of your big icons, you've nerfed her, you've taken her abilities and powers away. Oracle became a genuine character in her own right more into the 90s and 2000s. She became more technology, the technology and support person, but also, near genius level intellect and smarts and cyber crimes. And so that version of the character was long enough that it became its own thing. They rebooted it a few times where she became Batgirl again, or she recovered and became Batgirl. But they still flip-flop back and forth with the character based on this one story.
Gochitron says Moore's tendency to put sexual assault in most of his works is a little disturbing. And the problem with Alan Moore is, and I was introduced to him in The Watchmen, to be honest with you, and I went back and read some of his earlier works.
He's such a happy fellow.
Yeah, I mean, everything he wrote was kind of like that. Let's not even go into Miracle Man.
Like, he's a brilliant writer, but he's a depressed sort of person, so it comes out of his writing.
Well, one of the things that he tends to try to do as well is whenever he writes a story, he wants to write it as if, what if superheroes were in the real world? What would happen?
They were all pieces of shit.
Yeah, pretty much. And and Goji will be on the show tomorrow with me, along with you, Jones, or if you choose. And Goji has some toys he wants to show off. So I can't wait to have Gojitron tomorrow on the show. Good to have
They'll
you
be
on with
happy
us
toys,
tonight.
not depressed Alan Moore toys.
Oh yeah, exactly. And going over here, scenes from the Killing Joke were used directly in some of the various Batman films.
Yeah,
And
so
as
in the Dark Knight, the Nolan one, remember he goes in with the Joker and the cops turn a blind eye and he walks in and he starts smacking around in there. And on the right, I haven't watched the Joker Joaquin Phoenix film, but a lot of the stuff they got from that was from the Killing Joke, of course.
yes, especially the failed comedian.
Yeah, I never cared for that aspect because, like they made the Killing Joke's a great book. I'm taking nothing away from it. Like I've got criticisms of it, but I do love it for better or worse. But a lot of the times when it comes to fan stuff and different generations, it's like, oh, they gave a Joker an origin and they did this and that. I'm like, they gave him a fucking origin 30 years before this. It wasn't a mystery or secret. People just forgot about it. He was a Red Hood, and then he was the Joker and the Joker gang and other bullshit. And people just forgot because it was different generations.
See, and I kind of like that they tied all the knots in this, that they gave him, because like Bill said, this could be just a delusion in his mind or him remembering this in a way that didn't happen.
I like the Ledger one where he just chooses a different reality based on the day of the week.
Right, where he told the different stories about the scar.
Yeah.
You know,
I love that.
Let me interject something in here. It just occurred to me. Speaking of the Joker's mind, the way it works in his origin, let's go all the way back to Superpowers, the miniseries in the comic books. The Joker remembered his childhood where he was a little baby Joker with a Joker mom and a Joker dad, and he's sitting in the high chair, and they're all white-faced and green-haired. So, you know, and Joker, that's truly what he thought his childhood was like because the man is crazy.
Right. You know, and they touch on it in the Arkham video games too, where he's like, if you listen to the little psychological interviews where he's like, well, sometimes it hurts to remember. Sometimes I remember it like this. Sometimes I remember it like that. I'm not really sure. And, you know, I mean, a lot of it's all just manipulation and him trying to manipulate Harley Quinn. But you were saying you didn't see the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. I have to say,
I could watch it any day. I just chose not to watch it because I'm like, why do I need to see a Joker by himself? I'd rather read the comics.
I will say this: it's a better film than it has a right to be, and is it like they said? Is it like just another Scorsese film, like how Dark Knight was Heat with comic characters? Honestly, I think if you watch it without thinking of it as the Joker and just watch it. I do like Joaquin Phoenix. He's a brilliant actor, and he's a bit manic.
Well, you're talking about the Joker movie with Phoenix in it. Let me say this. First of all, you have to remember when you watch the movie, are what you seeing what actually happened, or are you seeing what he's telling the psychologist happened in his mind?
Right.
So there's nuances to that movie that are. I liked it.
Well, and there's the same, like we were talking about the ending of this Killing Joke here, and I don't know if there's a slide about that.
They're actually, I think that
so we're to the end of that. Well, what I wanted to say is to kind of tie this whole thing together is in the very beginning of the Killing Joke. It's the stage is set with Batman interviewing the Joker in the asylum, and he's come to a realization that there's only one way this is going to end. Either I'm going to kill you or you're going to kill me. And I just want to try to
that's what the Joker wants, to break that
happening, you know, and then the story goes on and we get to, you know, what the Killing Joke actually is. And at the end of the comic, the Joker tells Batman a joke.
A terrible joke. And then Batman actually laughs at it.
Before I give my opinion of what I think happened next, why don't we go down the line here and you guys just fill in what you think.
To this day, I don't know what happened on that last page because both Alan Moore and Boland have different versions of events. One drew it, one wrote it. They both have different points of view. You read it as a reader, and it's like a Christopher Nolan Inception. I'm like, was that fucking spinning top wobbling at the end, or was it not wobbling? It's left to you, the viewer, to get your own version of it, which I like. Your own interpretation. I do like in the Grant Morrison, who went on to do a really cool run on Batman years later, and his version as a kid when he read it in the 80s as like a sort of post-punk alternative radical sort of dude who lived across the road from all these across the lake rather from all this like military and like nuclear stuff going on where he lived in Scotland. He read it as a kid, which I wouldn't get. He read it as a kid that Batman broke his fucking neck on those last panels. That's what he got.
That's what I was going to say. The ending of the Killing Joke proves
the laughter stops in those last three panels.
Yeah, I mean, basically Batman killed the Joker at the very end of that,
which puts it as a one shot, not in continuity, having effects on other DC stuff because Joker's still alive next month in regular comics.
True, but and the way you have to interpret that is there's bits and pieces of that are in continuity and bits and pieces that are not, but it's a good standalone story as a Batman versus Joker, and this is the ultimate end. Batman finally had enough of him. When he told
I might still read it as a one shot.
That joke is what kills the Joker.
Writers who came on afterwards to do stuff on it.
You know, or he realized that what he said in the beginning was true, that I'm either going to kill you or you're going to kill me. And I just tried, because he makes that attempt at the end one more time. Is there a way we can just start over? I could help you. And the Joker says, it's far too late. I can't help you. And then he tells him the joke. And I don't know if you saw the animated, but in the animated, they almost play it up a little more, where as he's laughing, he's putting his hands on the Joker's shoulder and then working his way.
I haven't watched it yet.
It needs to be implied. It needs to be implied. Not thrown in your face like that.
Right. Well, I honestly, I think read the book. Don't watch that animated.
Yeah. Like Johnny said,
I haven't watched it yet.
The ending is in your own mind. It's whatever you want it to be at the end.
That's how it works. Well, and they've played up that ending in several other media. They've done stuff in Batman Animated, Revenge of the Joker, where it goes into the Batman Beyond. They did a comic series in the last couple of years called The White Knight and then Curse of the White Knight. Same kind of thing happens in the middle of the story. Instead of snapping his neck, he stuffs a whole bunch of pills down his mouth and he's like punching him like UFC style like this on the ground. And Gordon's there like, stop, you're killing him, stop, we're going to have to bloody shoot you. He stuffs so many pills down his mouth of some kind of experimental drug, it cures the Joker, and he goes on to become the mayor of the town and cleans up crime and becomes like the new kind of White Knight of Gotham. And then Batman goes to prison, and it's a really cool story. But again, it's riffing on just that end scene.
Right.
And that brings us to the next iconic storyline from 1996, Batman The Long Halloween. Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale did this. The art in it was spectacular. I remember when this came out, but I did not buy it. I wasn't
very stylized
at the time. This to me was like, this should have been Batman Year 2.
Yeah,
in my mind it is.
Proper crime stories.
In my mind it is. When I read through my Batman graphic novels, I start with actually I do kind of like the friggin' everything in backwards. I start with The Dark Knight Returns because I watched the ending first. And then I go to Batman Begins, or Year 1 rather. And then from there there's a Joker book, The Man Who Laughs or something.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I read that because I feel like that takes place right after Year 1. And then I go to this. Well, and that's how I read it in continuity in my mind.
Yeah, they did back in the day those nonsense sequels, the Year 2 with the Reaper and the Year 3 with the Robin stuff. But years later, they have a more writer-driven year 1, year 2, year 3, where they did that Long Halloween that was set in the early days in that first 5 years period. And they also did the Matt Wagner Faces and Monster Men. He did some stuff set way back in the early days of Batman. That became like a kind of new version of year 1, 2, 3 that makes sense, but it's a loose continuity. It's not trying to mess with your head.
Right.
Well, we brought back Carmine the Falcone, the Roman, who was played up very heavily in year 1, and also Selena Kyle comes back. So talk about this slide, guys.
Well, this is neat to me that there's this one's got a lot of like a whodunit, a lot of noir. It's almost like an old-timey mystery, detective film in a way, because as an audience, you're watching this and you're wondering, what is Selena Kyle's connection to Falcone? Who is the killer in this? Is it who you think it is? And, there's just a lot going on here.
And then we have this slide here. The Gordon Dent Batman Trinity is brought out. That was also hinted at in year 1. And then we have Catwoman in her new digs, the ones that she was wearing in the comics at the time, the purple outfit with the thigh-high boots on.
Yes, stripper boots.
Yeah, which
paying homage to her origins.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
well, I kind of like the cat suit from year 1 personally, the gray cat suit with the whiskers on it. And but yeah, we brought this Catwoman out, which I think there was an action figure made of it. I think I have it somewhere in my collection of stuff here.
Yeah, Mattel and McFarlane are both on there.
I actually like this version, and I'll tell you why. As it contrasts to the Batman suit, it plays off each other really well. Like they did this with Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man's red and blue, so most of his villains have a green aesthetic. Well, because it clashes with the color of the costume. This clashes with the color of Batman's costume.
Yeah.
So you can tell they're opposed. Batman in the purples, the Joker's purple, or the greens with the Riddler, So it's Penguin's got a lot of the purples in it, or at least back in the day he did.
Well, I kind of like the fact that not only did they get rid of that dress that she used to wear, or whatever it was that it looked like it would probably kill her if she tried to jump from one roof to another. They took her out of the high heel shoes and gave her some sensible boots there to wear. And the only thing
she got them sharp claws too, they're really scratchy, metal.
The only thing that doesn't fit well with that is that tail hanging off the end. But of course, we got Batman in a cape, so we got to suspend our disbelief just slightly.
Well, if this was a wrestling, you'd grab a cape or a tail and just slam him into the wall of the ground.
Of course. And moving on to the next slide here, Long Halloween was a 13-issue maxi series with many red herrings, and
that's featured on Scooby-Doo.
I can't. Let me get rid of that live streaming brand up there real quick.
I think it's his slow burn by memory.
Yeah, slow burn. And crime mystery themed around holidays. This particular book has been reprinted many times. Features a full sequel and prequel themed books from the same fan favorite artist and writer team, Loeb and Sale. Now,
I did enjoy it a whole lot back in the day, but later on,
another miniseries in this same vein. Was there not? Talk about that as well.
Well, they did Dark Victory was the sequel, and they've done that one that says Madness that's like set before it, and they've done some other one-shot specials like that one that they did back in the 90s, like kind of loose Halloween stuff that tied into it. But, it became very popular. It's been reprinted so much, and they went back. Dark Victory is a really good trade that's worth picking up to go along with the Long Halloween.
And that's where they introduced Robin, right? The Dark Victory.
Yeah, it's not
what
just.
What was the other one? Because there's one that's almost like a prequel, I think, to this.
Well, I think that's the Madness, that third picture along there.
Yeah, that one I really liked, where they had like a Christmas story, and you know, like they did kind of the same idea where you're following Batman around the calendar, and there were some continuity issues because I think like Two-Face is mentioned before he's actually created, and you got to kind of
like the Long Halloween was a full story that they really plotted and planned out, and there's fan critiques of it because it's sort of there's a bit too many red herrings where ducks and dives and back and forth, but it's an enjoyable read if you read it over a couple of days rather than one sitting. And Dark Victory, it's not so much a story sequel as a writer artist sequel in the same kind of style and themes and ideas. And then the other ones were more like just one-off specials that they later collected into a trade.
And that one actually became my favorite over the years because I have all three. And The Long Halloween is definitely the one that got me started in this Tim Sale Batman universe or whatever. And the art grows on you, you know, like at first I was like,
I didn't care for it at first, but later on I really enjoyed it.
That's a weird looking penguin, you know, like but it grows on you as you continue to.
They've done some other trades too. Like I've got one that's just the Tim Sale trade of Legends of the Dark Knight from the 90s. It's just random issues with his art. And they also did that whole series like Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Grey, Cap Red, White and Blue, whatever, the Marvel books. So as a team, as a combo, they did these really character sort of defining or iconic books and stories that would stand up years later.
I would also have to say before we move on to Nightfall here, they tackled Superman and that was really good. They did kind of the Superman origin in a way, you know.
That's one of my all-time favorite Superman stories.
Yeah, it's a season of Superman, or I can't remember, a Superman for all seasons.
Yeah, that's the book they should make into a TV show or a film. That book is great.
I think that's one of the best Superman trades that you can get.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'll check
I'm
that
gonna
out.
put this
there
up
she
real
is
quick.
With the wonky torso.
Yeah, I want to put this up. Michael Purvis sent that in, and we'll put that up real quick. That's a.
I'm still thinking of buying it.
Catwoman figure with that Catwoman costume from Long Halloween in there.
They really messed. It's a nice sculpt, but they really messed up the upper half and lower half torso with it's out of proportion. And I was about to buy it. That's the thing. It was Anthony's Customs, the channel that does the honest YouTube figure reviews, where he brought attention to that.
And so that brings us to the next storyline that we're going to talk about. Which
this is a Joneses special.
Now, chronologically, did this occur before or after the Long Halloween?
After. Way after.
Chronologically after, but like publishing wise beforehand, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Publishing wise, this was published before the Long Halloween.
Because the Long Halloween is set in that first 5 years period.
Now, in my opinion, at the time, things may change, but in my mind, it's always been this way. First, we got to kill Superman. Now we got to do something with Batman in the same vein.
They did it to all the heroes around this time. As well. They did that to all the heroes around this time. Like Punisher joined the mob, and Spider-Man was a clone, and Wolverine lost his medal, and I don't know that Captain America became a flag burner, and Daredevil could see.
Daredevil got recolored.
So they ruined everybody.
Now, Bane was not introduced in this. Bane was actually introduced in the Legends of Batman story, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. They put him in a couple of things. They had a random issue before Nightfall in the comics. They also had some one-shots and stuff about Bane. But this was a whole movement.
They darted the Riddler and made the Riddler buff.
This was
pretty wild.
It was a whole movement in comics coming out of that late post-80s period. You've had Watchmen, you've had Dark Knight. Everything's hard-edged and gritty and Mad Max and post-apocalyptic and angsty and punk. going into the 90s, they were really confused about what the hell to do with your iconic, your Captain America and your Superman and your Batman legacy characters. They're like, everything's been done. What can we do? They went into deconstructionism, where they were taking apart the elements and eventually put them back together. But at the time, even writers and artists working on it said we didn't really know what was going on. We had to kind of go with the times and go with what were the fans. You know, Image Comics was taking off, and everything was like just stupid cable camo pants and guns and over-the-top violence and crazy buff steroid Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior characters. And that's, you know, that's what gives us the Bane.
I remember this because I was just coming out of 8th grade and going into high school when this came out, and so this was my jam. I remember when this happened, and I remember how devastating it was to me with how it ended.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, at that time, I hadn't grown into a cynical adult where I knew, you know, oh, he'll be back. You know, like, so when this ended for me, I was just like, I will never buy another Batman comic again. They really, you know, like I was upset, you know. Which is what
Nightfall and the Azrael stuff was not. I agree. That was the follow up to this, in my opinion, was what became of it. But yeah, point to the next slide here. The new villain Bane is a variation on the Batman theme origin when a young kid growing up in the world's worst prison who overcomes obstacles by using physical training, dreams of meeting the fabled Batman in Gotham City. So we gave his origin of how he came to be before he got addicted to Venom, which Batman had already been addicted to once already in the Legends storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to skip ahead to the next slide here. Bane becomes a physical powerhouse, a master criminal, a tactical genius, and later enhanced with the drug called Venom that gives him near superhuman levels of strength temporarily, but is also a crippling drug addiction. So that explains how he became what he is. So he's basically better than Batman, stronger than Batman, more tactical than Batman, and breaks the Dark Knight. He just breaks him in two.
Well, in my opinion here, he did no such thing. He completely cheated. He breaks out all the
cheated,
villains.
but this is what the writers intended.
He didn't get Batman at his best. I mean, guy could barely stand up by the time they got a fight. So yeah, I was mad.
He got him to a point of fatigue and sleep deprivation.
You know, even to this day, I'm still mad. It's like that was not a fair fight. Dang it!
It was definitely not a fair fight, but if you're playing to win, you don't care about fair. You're like, I'm going to use my maximum resources and come at you with your minimum resources.
No, it was genius. And because I'm still so passionate about it to this day, tells me that they made absolutely the right decisions when they wrote it, because it invoked that, you know, the outrage, you know, and the other thing that made it even worse for me is when you go to the new Batman, you know, this bat monster thing that they did with Azrael, he seems to handle Bane pretty easily right away, you know, and that really bothered me because I'm like, you know, that's just a bunch of crap.
Yeah, but Bane was like the ultimate heel. He was Roddy Piper and NWO Hogan, or every guy that comes along is just going to come. I'm going to beat your heroes and laugh about it.
Right, and he did, and it bothered me. I remember because my friend Mark in school, he was a big Batman guy, and we were talking comics at school, and we were both really into this. And when it came out, it was just, you know. And
I tried to get some of those Kelly Jones images in there. See, he really gets into that bodybuilder muscle physique and the little rippling bits. Look at that image on the right, Azrael. He's got that like intercostals coming up through the rib cage that you're only going to see in a posed bodybuilder pose. Like he was a fantastic horror artist, and he was real fetish muscle showing on those covers. It was amazing.
Well, and he's kind of stylistic, much like the Long Halloween style was, but in its own way. But it doesn't really look real, but it looks.
It's exaggerated, but purposely exaggerated.
It looks cool.
And he does the same thing in his Elseworlds horror stuff, where he makes Batman into a skeletal vampire, but he's like rail thin, and his little muscles are sticking out through his bones everywhere.
Yeah, well, then some of those Kelly Jones, like the ears are way long, and the
ears are like
ridiculous, and it's like it couldn't work in a movie or in a cartoon.
Not really, no.
We're talking artistic license at this point.
Yeah.
Just because he's drawn that way doesn't mean that that's the reality of it. That's just the way the artist.
But he's so good at that artistic license. Like he's a fantastic artist, but he's really out there with his.
One of my favorite Kelly Jones covers. There's one where it's the Penguin's face, and his chin's like freaking this long, and his nose is sticking out, and you can see Batman's image in the top hat, and it's just a ridiculous picture of the Penguin where there's no human being could look like that, but it's just perfect.
Well, look, now let's talk here for a minute. So after Bane broke the bat, it leads into the Night Quest here, where a former supervillain named Azrael, who Batman had reformed, was chosen by Batman to be his replacement, right?
Good choice, Bruce.
Yeah, come on now.
And not Nightwing.
Maybe someone who's not brainwashed.
Yeah, not Nightwing. Really?
Let's get this asshole in there. And he was Azrael John Paul Valley. He was Jean Paul Valley was an asshole. He piece of crap. The Order of Saint Dumas had trained him. And brought him up to be some kind of a warrior or modern day knight or something. He's just a religious zealot, and here he has Robin come in and train this guy to become a replacement. Come on now.
It's like you see you're at work and they bring someone in, you're going to train them to replace you. It's like, no.
Well, and once he gets the mantle, he promptly kicks Robin right out of the cave. Hey, you're done. Get out of here, kid.
Yeah, with you. Then he starts turning the bat suit into another Azrael suit. Yeah. And I would think at this point, Commissioner Gordon will be like, who the fuck are you? You're Jeff.
Well, and he does. He does. He starts to question what's going on here. And then even when I'm going to skip ahead a little, when they get back to it, you don't get Bruce Wayne back as Batman. Then they finally do the right replacement, and Nightwing is wearing the bat suit with Tim Drake, Robin.
Yeah.
And Gordon even says, how many of them were there? Or was it always the same guy? And I believe Nightwing kind of sidesteps the question, and he just says, well, we got rid of the other guy. And Gordon says, well, at least there's that,
And I would have thought, I kind of, in my opinion, I would have thought that Gordon would have recognized Robin, Nightwing. He knew him from Robin to Nightwing to the replacement for Batman. I would have thought that Gordon was okay. I know who you are.
Well, my thing too was Gordon had been such a long-standing ally. Why couldn't you just tell him, hey, dude, I'm the old Robin, Nightwing. I'm standing in for him right now.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have to reveal his identity. He wouldn't have to tell him who he is.
I'm the old Gordon Robin. Knows that he knows Nightwing. Yeah, it doesn't mean Gordon would have known he was
Grayson.
Dick Grayson. It just means that he recognized Robin. I mean, he watched the kid grow up and become a superhero in his own right. And of course, all he ever wore was a domino mask. And then here he is. Now he's in a Batman costume, and Gordon okay, now I know who you are. You're going to be okay.
You goddamn voice and see the way you move. I know it's you.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, So
and he did go on to be Batman in a bunch of different stories too.
And of course, Bruce Wayne eventually heals like no other person in the world could ever do.
Yeah, that they used in that third Nolan movie with that chiropractor in a hole. Just punch you back.
In the Nolan movie, it happens in 25 minutes.
Yeah, 25 minutes with that unorthodox chiropractor.
Yeah, this took a little while here, and of course you got a lot of art from these.
Look at those ears.
Yeah, the long-eared Batman. We could do a whole show on whether Batman's ears should be long or short or
it's
medium.
definitely not realistic, but like that third cover there with those crazy long ears and the cape, that's exactly what he used in the 3 storyline Elseworlds where Batman fights Dracula, loses, and becomes a vampire. He looks just like that.
Right. And see, this stuff was my jam. Like, this is when I was the most into it, and it's funny because they did this, and I remember saying, I'll never buy another Batman comic again. I think I bought all these Night Quests with John
Of course
Paul
you did.
And it was the same thing when they did the Spider clone and Ben Reilly was Spider-Man. I was like, I'm not reading this no more. And I think I
read all those.
Yeah. It was
I
a
love
good
that
time.
one with the rats. You can smell the desperation, like the water's going in his mouth, his teeth are sticking out, the rats are on his eyes and his nose.
There's no way you could survive
that's
this.
Some Cronenberg body
Badger
horror.
said this is what he thinks of that McFarlane would think of as Batman's favorite era. So yeah, that might have been a Freudian slip there on your part there, Badger, but I know what you were saying, era.
Well, it's probably true because Spawn does the big, crazy, exaggerated cape and the horror elements, and you've got
this was that time.
We already know where the Todd Father goes on this stuff. He goes in Gimp Batman directions. So what do we got next here? That brings us to the end of the slideshow, basically.
Catch you later, Bat Imposter.
Right.
Showcase 94 with Azrael in it there. At the
I
very
do like
end.
that red variation. I'd still like a figure of the red version of that crazy Batman Wolverine claw outfit armor Iron Man thing.
It was a real injure himself with all those sharp points everywhere.
It was a real commentary on a lot of the stuff that was going on in comics at the time. You had Punisher and Wolverine were popular in the late 80s. The real extreme, over the edge, kill your enemies characters. That's everything Azrael was. And it's also what Batman wasn't, which Denny O'Neil has sadly passed on. Denny O'Neil, long-time editor, long-time Batman writer, spoke out saying, hey, look, in the 90s, we did these stories, and it's kind of, Batman isn't this crazy over-the-top character everyone thinks he is. So we're going to show you how much Batman isn't until you can't stand it, and then we'll bring him back to the real character that we established in the 60s and 70s. And people are like, oh, great, this guy's back, and Azrael's gone, and Superman's dead and killed by Doomsday, and Batman got his back broken, but eventually they got better. Yeah, they come back to the version they love.
When you're dealing that's the problem with progressing a storyline with an evergreen character like that.
Yeah. You
can do that, but you've got to reset it back to the way it was, because once you reach a certain point with character development with Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, whoever, you've got to bring them back to what the public consciousness thinks of them.
Yeah.
I will say there were some great As-Bat stories. I really liked the Tallyman villain that came about in that. He was fun. There was a great Scarecrow story where he became the King of Fear. That was fun. There's a funny moment where the Joker meets the As-Bat, and Joker knows on sight it's not him. Which is funny to me because Gordon was questioning it, who's probably seen him more than Joker has, but he's questioning it. Is it him? Is it not him? And quite honestly, Azrael's distancing himself from the police and from Robin and from everybody.
I like years later that Azrael became more of his own character within the DC continuity, and he's another anti-hero sort. And like Jimmy Palmiotti, who worked on Daredevil, did a whole bunch of really cool covers and sort of stylistic flourishes with that character and the over-the-top armor and everything. But he became long-term. He's in the video games. He's in the modern-day Batman stuff as another part of the Batman family, and sometimes allies, sometimes a guy they're pissed off with and don't want to work with.
And there was what was I getting at here? With Azrael there, it wasn't the first time he wore the Batman costume. Like he stood in for Bruce before, and Bane whooped him earlier in the story, and then and he was injured, and then later he comes back, and so he in a way got that whooping and redemption that Wayne didn't get, in this
that's
story.
A good point. I don't like I don't hate him as a character because there's a lot of in the Batman continuity over the decades. There's times where they've expanded out and gone full on Bat family with the original Batgirl and Batwoman and Bat bloody dog and Bat shark repellent and all that nonsense.
Right.
And then there's times where they really cull it back and like, okay, now he's just the brooding loner again, like Hellboy or Mulder and X-Files, where he's by himself on the case. He's awake 48 hours a day trying to solve a thing and insomnia in the Batcave. I like those stories, but I don't object to when they bring in all the other, Batwoman and men and dogs. If they do it in the right way.
Like, okay, we got Ace the Bat Dog, and we got Red Robin, and Red Hood, and Nightwing, and Batgirl, and Batwoman, and what was there, Harold the dwarf in the cave, and they had a bunch of different people, and then that's the Bat family, so to speak, and then eventually you get Batman's son Damian Wayne, but who's never invited back into the Bat family is Jean-Paul Valley. He's just kind of the redheaded stepchild of this thing.
He's still around. He just hangs about.
But he's never like really like the Huntress is in more than he is.
Yeah. I don't mind the extended characters, and it's like there's always multiple books. You got Batman, you got Detective Comics, you got Justice League, you got Cross. There's a place for each of them to do their own thing.
Sure. But like when they get into some of these other stories where they bring the Bat family back together again, no one ever thinks of Jean-Paul Valley as part of the Bat family.
No one's putting him in first on the Christmas list.
Done, and really he maybe should be.
They did a story in the what do they do? They had New 52, and then they did whatever was after that. Forget the name of Afterbirth and all that nonsense. And the last couple of years, they did a story called Mind, where they did City of Bane, which is basically Nightfall with just Bane without the Azrael stuff. And then they did a Azrael story that I was enjoyable, where Azrael gets disowned by the Order of Saint Dumas and come out with more modern stuff like robotics and AI. There's an AI Azrael suit that's a copy of Jean-Paul, just as a pure digital construct that beats him, and it was turned on him by his own former masters who have disowned him and said, no, the new AI is the new Azrael. But he ends up infecting it with the virus and arguing with it that it needs some kind of morality and it can't be this amoral construct, and beats it with his own intelligence. And it's actually a fun story.
Sure. No, I enjoyed they had a run of him shortly after he's no longer the Batman. And where he's like living in the sewers with the homeless. And I actually kind of enjoyed his soul searching and trying to find his own way. And I thought it was fun. He's an interesting character to say the least. But I do wonder why he was never brought back into the fold, so to speak, as some of the other members of the Bat family clearly are never left. But he's just always kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the Bat family.
Yeah. I do like the sort of tangent topics, like there's an ancient religious order going back to like your Christian Crusaders and knights and all that sort of stuff, and the symbology. It's interesting stuff to put in there to sort of touch on.
Sure.
And then, of course, if you want to talk about Robins, there was one Robin that got fired, and she was never brought back, and that was Cassie, right?
Yeah. Became a spoiler in that one.
Yeah.
Well, then there was the Carrie Kelly Robin for
the Carrie Kelly Robin was far into the possible future of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Which at one point I thought that's what they were going to go with for the Batman movie, was the Carrie Kelly Robin.
That would have been neat. It would have been neat to do something different,
It's a fun character.
You know what was funny is like I can remember the outrage, you know, when they switched Batman to Asbat. They switched Spider-Man to the Scarlet Spider. Wolverine has Bone Claws. Superman's 4 Superman.
Eradicator and all the other guys.
And I remember being so upset by this, but I probably never bought more comics, you know, so it worked. You know,
it's funny. A lot of the editorials back then telegraphed and told you 12 months ahead exactly what they were doing that nobody paid attention. Like, by the way, we're doing the story and everything's going to reset in 12 months. Nobody read those editorials.
Right. And, you know, and what's funny to me is as soon as those characters started to catch on in my mind, where I started to actually enjoy Asbat, I started to actually like the Ben Reilly Spider-Man. I actually started to get a feel for those 4 Supermen, and I was into the whole which one is it really, if any of them. Then it ends, and it's like I was just starting to like this. You know,
I felt they'd done Ben Reilly dirty when they made him dissolve into clone dust. He should have gone off and been part of New Warriors or Secret Defenders or West Coast Avengers or one of them, and you know.
Well, and then he is brought back later through I don't know why.
But it's not him. It's not the actual Ben Reilly's. It's a different clone again with a different personality. Like I read both ones and I went, the one in the 90s definitely went to dust and nothing. He's gone and dead.
That's terrible.
The other one they brought back was a different clone again.
You know, the clone I enjoyed the most was Kane, who was like the Frankenstein.
Yeah, he was interesting. He became another Scarlet Spider.
Yeah, that character was fun, and they did a slow burn with Kane where, and it's funny because like you know you're being manipulated, like Cain and Abel. Come on, like your brother trying to kill. You know, it's like it was right there the whole time. You could have picked up on it.
Yeah.
But you know, I remember wondering who is that? How does he know who Peter Parker is? Why is he obsessed with Mary Jane?
I read all those back then and kind of enjoy them because I'm naive and I didn't know all the history of the character and that. But it's unfortunate the writers were just winging it. They were just winging it, and it was editorial stuff, and they should have ended some of those stories and started.
There was no plan. It was like, oh, it's May, bring Superman back.
It was big. They became a big mess. At least the death of Superman was kind of a plan. They started it, they ended it, they moved on. They didn't drag it on for 5 or 8 years like the Spider clone. So,
right.
Now, let me run over here to the comments real quick and see if anything new has happened here. Ojatron once again. Replacements. Rhodey for Tony, Walker for Rogers, Thunderstrike for Thor, Artemis for Diana. It was a 90s thing. Yes, that. Like I said, you can progress a story so far until you have to reset it with an evergreen character like this, because the public consciousness is that they're this, and when if a casual reader picks up a comic and it's not that, they're like, why?
That ain't Barry Allen. Who's this other guy?
You know, I was going to say there's ones where it worked. Like Wally West was
Wally West was around all through the 90s and the JLA and that.
A lot of people forget Hal Jordan was not the original Green Lantern. He's actually I think, an improvement, you know.
And Manic Plastic Toy Shop, pretty damn nice. It's Toy Biz, early 90s all over again. Now, they look pretty good there, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm afraid those are going to get some of my money.
Well, I had my hand hovering over the button, and as we come to the end of this conversation, I think it's about time to do a little feeding of the ducks here. So we've had a pretty good discussion on this era of Batman. I can only imagine what part 2 of this is going to be like. This is probably an ongoing series as well. We may not get to it right at next time, but at some point in the future, we'll pick up a Batman discussion again. No. Yeah, it's that time, man. And the Thanos copter's here. Good to see you, Thanos. You kind of got here at the very end of the show, but hey, I want everybody who didn't watch the beginning to watch the beginning and watch at least the parts where we were discussing Batman all the way through, because it has.
The Jones Man, that was his picks for the show and the stuff he enjoyed.
Well, that was the stuff to where I was the most knowledgeable. That's all. I've read all of those many, many times.
Yeah.
Been a great chat tonight, says the Badger. Yeah, you missed it, but you're right. The replay is where it's at for, and even if you watch the whole show, catch the replay just to pick up the parts that you may have missed here or there. And we get some big applause here from Screw Your Feelings. We appreciate everyone tonight. I appreciate Johnny's hard work working on the
what work? I'm just talking about the comics we used to read.
That was a great slideshow.
Yeah, you put together a wonderful slideshow.
I just mostly just chucked images because, like, we already know about the comics. We don't need the research. Let's just get in there and talk about it.
No, it was good. It's perfect.
Absolutely. And Manic Plastic says, I always love listening to the knowledge that you guys know. And OBS says a good night to all. And Comics says Mr. Sorensen there. So everyone, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Gojutron will join me tomorrow. I can't wait. But in the meantime, everyone have a good journey and see you next time.
Good night for me. Good woo.
Special thanks to the channel supporters. Without your help, these adventures would not be possible. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's adventure, please hit like, subscribe, and share the video.